Insurance isn't one size fits all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy, or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life, on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Years ago, Ruhama Wolle was sitting in a parking lot when she realized she was having an ultimate bridesmaid moment. She was in Miami for a bachelorette party for her cousin's wedding. She and a bunch of her cousin's friends were out on the town. One of the other women had coordinated a big trip to see Magic Mike live. It was an expensive ticket. They started with dinner first.
We're dressed like we're going out, right? And we're ready to have a good night. We're all excited. Music's playing.
As they pull in for the Magic Mike part of the night, ready to see some Channing Tatum types dancing around, something feels off.
And you just feel the energy sort of like shift the minute we pull up. It is, when I say a deserted stadium, you will know hands down the minute you pulled up that it was off season for that venue. There was not a single soul there except for one pickup truck that just so happened to be in the parking lot.
Rue and her group drive over to the truck and say, "We're here to see Magic Mike live." And the guy at the truck is like, "Yeah, that's not happening here."
My instinct wasn't, oh, we're at the wrong location. My instinct is we have been scammed and something's off.
The women start scrambling to figure out where to go, what to do, as they sit, all dressed up, out hundreds of dollars in a parking lot.
My gut reaction was to just hysterically start laughing to the point where I have like tears coming down my face. And my sister's like, "You're being rude as fuck." Sorry for my language.
Ruhama was thinking, to be involved in someone else's wedding is a special, special time, for better and worse. From the Boston Globe, this is Love Letters. I'm Meredith Goldstein. So often on Love Letters, people mention when they get married, or they say they're going to get married, or that they'd like to get married. It's usually a one-off comment. And then we got married. We've had a few wedding-centric episodes. One that comes to mind was the one about the couple who renewed their vows multiple times. What we haven't done is talk about wedding parties, bridesmaids, and inner circle guests in particular. As a bridesmaid many times over, I did want to spend one episode before a big wedding season paying attention to those of you who are about to be of service to people in love. I need to start by saying I love weddings and I adore being in wedding parties. I feel and have always felt deeply honored to be asked. Even in my 20s, when people were getting married left and right, I loved it. I was even a little embarrassed by how much I loved it. I didn't always love the cost or the expectations, which we'll get into, but the responsibilities and the organization of it all reminded me of having a key role in a high school musical. To some extent, weddings are theater productions, and I do love live theater. Today's guest, Ruhama, who you heard from at the start of the episode, also loves love and weddings. In theory, but it's complicated.
My name is Ruhama Wolle. I am an author. I am also a style partnerships editor. I consider myself a creative. I'm originally from Ethiopia, reside in New York City.
Ruhama has just released a book called I Hope You Elope, a Bridesmaid Survival Guide. It's part memoir about being in various weddings. It also outlines the role of being a bridesmaid and the range of tasks that title can require a person to do. It goes into the financial commitment, the emotional commitment, the ups and downs of being ranked as one person in a special group of supporters at a wedding. Ruhama wrote the book after she had an essay published in Glamour in 2023. That essay had the headline, "To all my friends, this is my bridesmaid resignation letter." The essay basically said, "Thanks, friends, for asking me to be a bridesmaid, but I will not do this anymore. No more unflattering dresses. No more requirements for my hair. No more list of expenses for another person's party." The last lines of that essay were, "Spare me future inquiries. Yes, this implies I won't have bridesmaids when my big day arrives. Here's to me hanging up my bridesmaid sash in my prime." My instinct as I read that essay, those words back then, was that, wow, this is scathing. But in truth, Ruhama's message just felt uncomfortably honest. She was saying what many people have felt, which is that when weddings come around, friendships suddenly come with a price, and not just a financial one. There's this weird expectation that you, A, have to say yes immediately to being in a wedding party because you're so lucky to be asked, and B, when you say yes, you're agreeing to everything the other person wants you to do. Ruhama's book is a guide for getting ahead of the problem. It's also her advice about how to deal with discomfort without losing a friendship. Because Ruhama did lose a friendship after one wedding. She gets into it in detail in the book. It's heartbreaking and complicated. She doesn't want to talk about that friendship much here today, but I think many people will read I Hope You Elope and find the story therapeutic. It's really about how a wedding can put a highlighter over the best and worst parts of our relationships. Whatever was bubbling up before a wedding suddenly overflows. And sometimes you wind up seeing a side of a person you didn't even know was there, on both sides. We all know sometimes bridesmaids can behave terribly. I know this for sure as a former bridesmaid who, at least in one circumstance, made another person's day all about my problems. And all it would have required was better communication. I'll get into that. Today's interview is a meditation on weddings for bridesmaids and brides. I wish I didn't have to be too gender specific about it, but I do know that Ruhama is talking and writing about the expectations of weddings for women. For bridal parties and bridesmaids, it's long been unfairly different and complicated. Also, this conversation can apply to all rituals that involve expectations of friends and family. Whether we're celebrating someone else or we're the subject of the celebration, we can probably all use a reminder that we're all people with feelings. I want to start by asking you, when you were growing up and there was like media images of what it meant to be in a wedding or a bride or a bridesmaid, what was your perception of it? What did you think the role of a bridesmaid would be, and were you excited about it?
I mean, I don't think I've ever been excited to be a bridesmaid, only because, and this is just me personally, getting me into a dress, let alone clothing that I've never wanted to, like, that I don't want to wear, has been my life pain point, down to the fact that I kid about it now, but as a teenager, I remember being like, I don't want to pursue this career because it has a uniform. And my parents were like, huh? I think in terms of what I was digesting at a young age, in terms of what film, television, then later social media, I feel like there's a point where I talk about it in the book where I'm like, I'm not above this. I am the girly who has always wanted a big wedding. I love weddings. Someone can easily look at it and be like, she's probably anti-wedding. And I'm like, I'm not. I have always wanted the big wedding of it all. I'm the person who probably has Pinterest boards saved, kind of waiting for that moment as well. But in terms of the bridesmaid gig, there's more work than people are making it out to seem. Of course, we want to show up for our girls. We want to show up for our community with love and support them. But I truly think that no one has defined it. And it gets to the point where support can mean anything. So I was always reluctant of being a bridesmaid. I just didn't think it was going to sort of hit on this level in terms of what it costs time and financially. So I think I've been a wedding lover my whole upbringing. I just was never excited to be a bridesmaid. I can be honest in that.
I think I was when I was younger, and I think that's because it's like a reward or something, or a ranking. I think when I was young, it seemed like, ooh, I've been chosen. It also felt very grown up. I remember vividly my Uncle Brad getting married, and I was a flower girl, but it was the first time I ever wore pantyhose, and I felt like a woman. I was a woman that day, right? Like I was a grown up. I had pantyhose on, right? So all of these things felt like they were symbols of adulthood. That's what a woman on a TV show would be. Now, of course, you get into the age where you're asked, usually in your 20s, maybe 30s. And I remember saying yes before even asking what that meant. From your expert perspective, we've seen people who choose a wedding party based on the history of their own lives, that they're bringing together people from different parts of their history as if to say, I am a scrapbook and I am coupling up and here's what it is. Then there are people who choose a wedding party based on the community they have built with a partner. What are your thoughts about this? And I know there's not one right answer, but...
No, I love that you hit that note, Meredith, because even though I was never excited to be a bridesmaid, I think the conversation, and I call it sort of this like brain notes app that just like exists, is I've always had the list in my head of who I potentially thought would be my bridesmaid, right? My group of friends. And that changes throughout seasons. Someone I was best friends with in high school that I'm like, oh, she was always supposed to be. And so that list has always been roaming in my head. I just feel like I wasn't on the flip side of being excited about participating in being a bridesmaid myself, but I was always excited about who would be my bridesmaid. Because you're right, it's the moment where you define, these are my core girlies. And I think the tricky part of the role and what this season requires of women is that it essentially asks you to rank, no matter what, like that is the reality. You rank your friendships. And I think the reason I even called the chapter Bestie Inflation, it's a real problem. I think that it happens when the title starts carrying more weight than the actual relationship. And I say that because people get caught up in legacy. There is something about wedding that brings nostalgia and how long you've known someone and what that person sort of represents in your life. What I've seen from interviewing so many women is that a lot of folks will say, oh, I was a bridesmaid for her because she had also made me a bridesmaid, but we haven't spoken in 5 years. Or it's someone at work, and because I chose a work wifey and they're super close, I kind of felt entitled to also ask her. Or family pressure and I had to include a cousin. Or this was my childhood best friend and I felt like I needed to include her. And so the thing about it is people underestimate what the role requires and what showing up as a friend requires. I think asking somebody you haven't spoken to in like 5 to 7 years to show up for you in the same capacity that they showed up for you then versus a friend who has been with you ride or die for this particular season, they're going to show up in 2 different ways, but the role requires them to show up in the same way.
That's interesting. So I want to play out an ideal communication between someone asking and someone deciding whether to accept. So let's start with advice you would give to the person getting married. And I'm so excited you do love weddings and that you're into this stuff because you have that much more empathy than other people might who are maybe not into weddings. You know who you might ask, right? You've said this. So if you're the person asking, How might you ask while also communicating what the job entails? How do you let somebody know I'd like you to be part of this, but it's not just a title, it's more than that?
I think from the bridesmaid POV, no one has ever defined what it means to be a bridesmaid and like what it all can come with. And so what I'm saying is here's finally in writing what could potentially be asked of you, right? So read it, understand it, and then when you are asked, be realistic with yourself. Understand your budget that season. Understand your capacity, whether that's PTO, whether that's whatever you're juggling in life. And so when a bride comes and however form that is, whether it's a phone call, a text, a proposal box, there is this automatic assumption in our culture that the minute the ask is presented, you just have to say yes. And there is that pressure, especially if it's done publicly, especially if you are in a table at a brunch with the girls and it's a proposal box. So I understand where that gets tricky, especially for people who fall under the bracket of like, I'm a people pleaser. What I'm hoping this book does is really encourages folks to start asking the hard questions early on. Support looks different for every bride. So I think this is the moment to encourage the bride to really figure out what that looks like for her particularly. And I don't think you need to get into the weeds of the cost on the day you were asked. I think if anything, it's starting the dialogue to be like, I want to know what supporting you looks like. Tell me, like, is bachelorette something that you really want to do? I think what people underestimate is that because brides and bridesmaid are coming in this for the first time, usually, right? It becomes this like, brides don't even know what they want out of a bridesmaid until the train is fully in motion. And so I think this is the time to say, hey, I love you. I'm excited to celebrate you. I would love to get a little bit more detailed. Take all the time you need, a couple weeks. There's no rush, but would love to at some point get on a call with you and like talk through what it is that you want in terms of support.
I just want to pop in here to say that I think Ruhama is so right about this because I have never paused for more than 1 second when I was asked to be in a wedding. Up until recently, I'd also never paused when asked to fulfill any kind of role of honor in a friendship because I'm just so happy to be nominated. I'm so happy someone has chosen me. But I have been better about this in recent years. Last year, I was asked to go to a wedding of a close friend, just as a guest, but it would have wrecked my life a little bit to make it happen. It was really far away. And I shocked myself by having the maturity to say, I don't think I can pull this trip off, but please, let's find another way for me to celebrate this new stage of your life. I don't know how that felt to hear on the other side. My friend was super classy about it. But I do think people getting married, I hope an initial maybe is okay for you to hear, especially for wedding parties, because you really want to know that the people who have signed up are on board. Ruhama says that if people are not really on board, it can be bad.
I think starting the dialogue early is so critical because the revolving door of yeses is where resentment can get built, right? If you automatically say yes, and it's fine to automatically say yes, I think, it very much is then at some point in time, before everything goes into motion, expectations need to be established. Expectations across costs, expectations across time commitment, logistical things that the bride wants. And most of the time, because the bride is so stressed out about the event itself and the production of the day, that sometimes she's like, I'll get the basics over to them. And I think that's where a huge gap happens, right? Where you've said yes, you haven't gotten full rundown on what's being asked of you. And now you're doing it in real time. And you're like, wait a second, I didn't expect to wear a dress that I don't even want to wear, that I didn't get to contribute any say in. I also don't want to go to this country for a bachelorette because that's not where I would use my PTO, let alone vacation funds that's limited for this year. And so I think it really becomes this dance of you're saying yes in real time, but because you've said the initial yes, you feel like you're obligated to continue to say yes. So I'm like, have these conversations early on, establish what your budget is. And if you have these transparent conversations with the bride early on, you've set the tone, right? Where you've let her know you only have $1,500 to spend on this. And you're like, girly, we're at $1,400. I can't do anything beyond this, but I'd love to show up for you in this way. I'd love to come and make sure for all your tailoring for your dress, I'm there, I'm present.
My personal feeling about this, for people getting married, if you have a friend who is eye-rolling everything about a wedding, or maybe can't commit to the cost and time it requires to be a bridesmaid. If that person is still important to you, ask them to do a reading or make a toast. I love the idea of showing friends you know what they're good at. I have to say, I'm a pretty good officiant. When we come back, I talk to Ruhama about a wedding I went to in my 20s where there was a lot of drama, and I think I was the problem. And we also get into why I love being in wedding parties, now more than ever. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. Like many, I like bars. Energy bars, fiber bars, protein bars. But I tend to like the kind that seem like a candy bar and are actually not that great for me. IQ Bars, a sponsor of Love Letters, sent me very healthy bars, a sampler pack, and I ate the peanut butter chip bar, which was packed with plant protein, and it made me feel like a person again. It was so good that I'm about to use my own podcast promo code to buy more, and some mint chocolate chip flavor, and blueberry pomegranate. With over 25,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body-boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text LETTERS to 64,000. Text LETTERS to 64,000. That's LETTERS to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Love Letters is brought to you by Rula. One of the hardest parts about therapy is that by the time you realize you need support, the last thing you want is a long, stressful search process. Figuring out insurance, finding someone qualified, trying to book an appointment that isn't months away. Enter Rula. They make getting connected with a therapist feel much more straightforward. Rula partners with over 100 insurance plans, and the average copay for patients is just $15 per session, sometimes even less depending on your coverage. Instead of just matching you with whoever's available, they connect you with therapists based on your needs, preferences, and goals. They also stay involved throughout the whole process, helping with scheduling, checking in on your progress, making sure that the care you're getting actually feels helpful. And with a network of over 15,000 licensed therapists and psychiatrists nationwide, appointments can start as soon as tomorrow. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit rula.com/loveletters to get started. That's RULA.com/loveletters. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget.
The road to the NBA Finals ends here, with star guards setting the tone. The Cavs eye another upset, while the Knicks carry the dreams of all of New York. The Eastern Conference Finals continue on ESPN and ABC.
We're back with Ruhama Wolle, author of I Hope You Elope, a new book about how being in somebody else's wedding is a lot more complicated than it seems. It's a memoir and a guide, and a critique of traditions that have affected many. Even in the smallest weddings, there's all this expectation for things to look a certain way, which means you're often set up for disappointment. Unless you're me in my 40s, because suddenly I have friends who make a lot more money, and certainly more money than me. A lot of this has gotten easier for me as I've gotten older, partly because people are busy. I tend to, I don't want to be too binary about this, but I tend to think that my friends who are more my age now, they either like get married, maybe it's a second wedding or a first, but it's so small, I might not even know it happened. I mean, it's just like more of a, we want to do this to put this in writing, but it's not about celebrating the event of it. Maybe they've been together more than a decade. The other kind around my age, which is my absolute favorite, is we have some money. Mm-hmm. We are two people in love, and we want to show gratitude to the communities that brought us here. And I went from in my 20s feeling like I was like on the staff, which is something you talk a little bit about in the book. Now I feel like some of these people, I'm like, I just got a destination vacation. I am not lifting a finger. I am useless, and I am being treated to excellent food, a manicure, a party. And I'm like, sign me up. I'll be in and go to every wedding for those people. But also I see as I get older, more creativity in roles. And I have noticed that some close friends have said, will you please come and do a reading? And I'm like, oh, there it is. Or will you please come, and you are so important to me that I've tasked you with sitting with family that is important to me. Like, there are these additional roles that aren't part of this wedding party, but are still ambassadors to them and their relationship at a wedding.
The way I really want to hit the note of what reimagining looks like, let's take away the prescriptive idea of a wedding, right? Where you have essentially a full day run of show back to back. And I have this event planner production background to be able to really say, I can't imagine being a woman producing this for the first time ever and not losing it, because it's such a huge stressor, especially if you've never done this before. I want people to really pull back, reel back, and say, hey, you and your partner, if you sat down and said, what does it look like to celebrate our union in a way that feels authentic to us? That can look so many different ways. People do block parties, people do a cinema night, like a beautiful dinner, and it can look so many different ways. But I think we get so caught up, it's the wedding industrial complex of it all, that a wedding has to look this prescriptive of like, here's the ceremony, here's cocktail hour, here's the reception afterwards. And I'm like, it doesn't have to look like that. You can completely create it the way you want. And then I think it would sort of reestablish what even a bridal party can look like, right? If it doesn't fall under this, all of us walking down the aisle, it can easily be what you said. We have a beautiful dinner. I'd love to have you do a reading. I'd love for you to make a toast, right? And showing up could be in the lead up to it. Utilize your friends for the talent that they have. I wish my friends reached out to me in a way that was like, Ru, we know you're the fashion girly, so find us a designer that's within this budget. It could be anything, and put a mood board and like send us some ideas. No one did that. And looking back, I'm like, could I have taken that on? Yes. Did I have the capacity to take it on in that fashion and form? Probably not. But I feel like if that was my job, I could have done it well versus all the other things that you're expected to do as a bridesmaid.
And for many people listening to this, they have already said yes. Whether it's to be a guest in a wedding party, they're in. Mm-hmm. It's happening in June. Maybe they may be seeing or feeling things. They may be seeing new sides of the person they love. They may be not self-aware about the ways that their own feelings about weddings and their own relationship life are seeping into the experience. I'm thinking of a wedding. Actually, I was a bridesmaid in this wedding, but I remember, and actually my first fiction book was not so loosely about this wedding. Names have been changed, but my God, there was not a lot of fiction in that book, but I was immature. My ex-boyfriend was going to be there. I was stressed. I made it about me. I did my best. But also when I got there, I realized the bride had sat me at the table with him, despite my asking not to. And she said, but I want my college friends to be together. It was her day. And she was like, I want these tables to represent chapters of my life. And I'm like, you're sitting me next to this guy at a table who makes me feel bad. I need to say here that I did not do a good enough job telling that particular bride how much I didn't want to be at that table. Or maybe I did, but I also probably made jokes about it. The thing is, I was in this extra special position as a bridesmaid, and I felt like I'd really shown up for her, by choice. And then suddenly I was sitting across from unpleasantness. But if you're my friend who was the bride that day, and you're listening, I am okay with all of this. And I loved your wedding, and I should have been more clear about my boundaries. I mean, it wasn't even 2010 yet. We didn't even really use the word boundaries. We were both at fault, and it was not a huge conflict. We laughed it off, but even if I hadn't been in the wedding, I would have been a guest at that table. Yeah. And I really didn't know in that moment to say, this is a deal breaker. You must seat me with Aunt so-and-so so I don't ruin this for you, versus what I actually did do, which was, this is 2 hours and I can get up and dance. Like and not holding that against her. I think like, yeah, so whether you're just a guest or a wedding party member,
it is a heightened season. There's a hierarchy that comes into play, right? We have preached from the dawn of time that it is her day. And I think everything has played into that. And there is a level of grace that I want us to have, because we also understand that it is really much a trickle-down effect. There's family pressures. Also, you said it, like it's a very emotional time, because I think financially, people also underestimate there is the dream wedding that you want, and then there's probably the reality of what you can afford. And a bride has to make sense of that. And that is also sometimes not the easiest season. When it comes to friendship, it very much enters a high pressure environment, nothing more like a wedding. And I want to say this is also the time for essentially enlightenment as well, because when you really think about it, Consider a Bride does wonders. Even in your particular story, I'm like, if you have told somebody that something makes you feel uncomfortable, and in their minds it's like, it's my day, it's my wedding, and it's my season, and you're just gonna have to maneuver around that, I would pause and hesitate and be like, okay, I'm here, but I'm now sort of going to move differently in this friendship, because no matter what the day is, I think there's still a level of love that needs to be reciprocal. And so I think that is also the reality of being a bridesmaid. I think there is this balance of showing up for the people that you love and being there for community. But if it keeps coming at the compromise of your peace of mind, or you have stated your needs and they are being brushed aside because it is quote unquote her day, I think this is a time for a friendship reckoning. It might not be in this particular season, but it might be you need to sort of reflect on that and see how you want to move forward in the friendship. You'd be surprised at how many friendships are lost at folks being a bridesmaid. I mean, I've lost a friendship in that, and friendship grief is probably the hardest, more so than even relationships themselves. And weddings are truly prime example of times where friendships break up. And it's such a sad thing to even think about, because in my mind, I'm like, if I have wedding photos and I have to continue to look back at them and know that a certain person or certain folks are no longer friends with me, like, I'm like, that would not, like, that's truly with any photos that you have of old memories, but I'm like, your wedding? That's such, like, it's so much pressure. And for me, I'm like, the best thing to do is, if these conversations happen early on, you're also giving the bride the room to be able to show up and respond. Because I think people underestimate if you are able to be like, and this is a conversation that happened after the fact, but in the friendship that I lost, I think when we eventually had the conversation, she was like, I just wish you were honest from the beginning, Rue, because if you told me this was your capacity, I would have respected it. And I wish you could have come to me in that. And I remember thinking back, being like, I couldn't. Like, we have been, something about wedding and culture has like silenced us, and the group dynamics of it all has us biting our tongue.
It is interesting also. You talk about this need to have conversations early, and that doesn't have to be the second you're asked to be a bridesmaid, but it is a really good moment to talk about things that might be on your mind about the friendship, about the expectations. I do also think when we talk about that wedding I mentioned, it put a highlighter over things. So one of the things I loved about what happened, and maybe just because she and I are able to laugh a lot off, was that she was probably wrong to ignore my request to not be at that guy's table. However, I think when she looked at me that day and said, I want my college friends to be able to sit together. I mean, this man did not wrong me horribly. He just broke up with me. He wasn't a bad person. She was a little bit saying, like, it's been a few years. Suck it up. Get over it. And she's not wrong. Like, I was very slow to move on from that relationship, and I was overly dramatic about it, and I was like, ugh. And it was great in that moment to actually have a friend look at me with an eye roll and say, you're going to sit down and you're going to have a piece of weird cake, and you're going to do it near your ex-boyfriend who is with the woman he's now going to marry because he's moving on with his life.
Yeah.
And I do think weddings it can be a painful thing about weddings, but also a beautiful thing about weddings, that in its heightened state, it reveals things we need, things we want. Not all of this is comfortable, but some of it is good.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's opportunity for growth, even in the friendship, right? And I think you said it, where two folks can recognize their wrongs on both end and be able to have that dialogue and that conversation. And I think in a lot of ways, that can happen if it happens at the appropriate time. But if resentment has been built and things are said at the end, and it's like, why was it acknowledged in real time? I think that is where I'm also learning how things could have been done differently.
I mentioned that I wrote my first fiction book based on a wedding I was in, and I am grateful to that bride in question because she allowed for that. She was generous in that she gave me her approval to use some very specific people and events to inspire my story. In fact, she didn't even mind that my author photo on the inside of that book jacket is me in my bridesmaid's dress walking down the aisle at her wedding, which basically said, yeah, I wrote this book after this particular wedding. I'm sure there were people who were also involved in that wedding who did not like that I put some of it down on paper, even if I changed it to fiction. I'm a little bit less daring now as a writer. It makes me think of how all of this started for Ruhama with her essay about resigning as a bridesmaid, because it must have been really hard for people in her life to read how complicated it was for her to be a bridesmaid and to do so many tasks that didn't come naturally to her. She was basically saying after the fact, I wish I had been able to say no. It's like on the one hand, her essay and this lovely book helps people navigate a really weird event process, but it also makes Ruhama vulnerable. There's a lot in this book that exposes how close friendships can be so at risk. As a reader, I am grateful because I do think that so much about romantic love, finding it and celebrating it, winds up actually being about friendship and what we ask of each other as we change. You wrote an essay about this that got a lot of eyes. What were some of the responses you heard? What was the feedback?
So essentially, the feedback was, I want to say, hilarious, because if anything, I knew that there was probably people who felt the same pain points that I did, and the level of frustration I was feeling. I didn't expect it to go viral. I did not expect that many folks to feel seen, but it clocked to me quick that I'm like, oh, wow. I was not in this alone, even while I was being a bridesmaid, because I think the most interesting responses I was getting was from people who were bridesmaids alongside me, who were just like, I'm so glad you said this. And I'm like, girl, I thought you were enjoying this like the entire time, because I thought I was the one who was sort of side-eyeing the whole thing. But clearly, it seems that we are all sort of navigating it in silence. And I think it's not even the role itself. It's the fact that it's not clear what comes with the role until you're in it, right? And I think if that clarity comes, then, and you've signed on, you know exactly what you signed on for. But I mean, I've gotten some crazy stories as well. Like, people have told me imagine being a bridesmaid for a wedding. One was Disneyland. It was Disneyland. They were expected to sort of be in costume, and the wedding got annulled like a week or two later.
Let's say somebody's listening who's about to go to a wedding this coming weekend, and they're kind of at their wits' end with the whole thing. What advice would you give them about how to get through the weekend, and also whether it's necessary to go through whatever conflict you felt?
For starters, I'm like, they probably should find something that will center them throughout the weekend, right? Like, whether that is, I will designate, like, I need to run every morning, like, find what is your outlet and be on that. Hydrate. I think people also underestimate that there are plenty of folks who can jump in, and this is also time to delegate. Like, if you feel like you're the person who always says, yes, I got it. It can easily be like, hey, do you mind helping her with this? I'm going to take a quick minute. I need a breather. I think the one thing, and I had to look back I barely ate, drank, slept in these weddings weekend moments. And I look back and I'm like, I could have cared for myself a lot better. And I think it's because we get so caught up on like, we're at her beck and call, but it's like your friend is also not expecting that. I think we just feel because of the title and the role. And so I would encourage finding breathing room throughout the weekend where you're able to just recollect yourself.
To everyone going to weddings this weekend or this summer, remember, be kind to yourself and others. Keep in mind that it's all a story, perhaps one you'll tell years later, to a friend, in a book, on a podcast, to someone you love. Remember to take deep breaths. And if the cake is good, enjoy it. For the record, that bride who had me sit with my ex, her cake was the best wedding cake I've ever had, and I ate a lot of it. Ruhama Wolle's book, I Hope You Elope, is available wherever you get books. This episode was produced by Jasmine Aguilera, story edit by Veronica Chow, sound design by Jasmine Aguilera. Special thanks to Linda Henry and Brian McGrory. Remember, Love Letters is also an advice column. You can ask about relationships, friendships, and yes, even weddings, to loveletters@boston.com. When you send a question, you help people wondering the same thing. And if you like the show, tell us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. This is my formal call out to Magic Mike that I believe you are owed free tickets from the Vegas show.
Ticketmaster also owes us tickets.
Yeah, they do. Well, they're in their own trouble. I'm Meredith Goldstein. Thanks for listening. If you've ever gone down a health rabbit hole, wondering what's real and what's hype, you need to check out Health versus Hype from the American Medical Association. It's a new podcast hosted by science communicator Tres Dominguez, which breaks down viral health trends, supplements, and wellness advice to tell you what's real, what's risky, and what's actually backed by science. Questions like, how much protein should we really be consuming daily? Or what does a sleep score really mean? And what's the deal with intermittent fasting? With trusted medical experts guiding the conversation, Health versus Hype is a smart, straightforward way to be informed. Listen to Health versus Hype wherever you get podcasts.